So could you share with us your story that led you to doing the work you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think back to it, there were two big initiations or portals that really opened me to this work. One of which was in high school. I was in a relationship. I thought I was in love, but there were all kinds of toxic behaviors going on. Our sex life was not great at all. Internally, my body knew this guy is cheating on me, but he was such a massive manipulator that I stayed in the connection for 2 years. And so it was like this crazy, I basically made myself nuts because my body was telling me one thing and I knew it on such a deep level, but then I allowed myself to get manipulated. So that's one piece. And then the second piece was that when I was in college, a little bit later down the road, I got super sick. I lost my menstrual cycle for 2 years. I had like all kinds of health stuff come up. And in that time, I also was not letting myself go on dates. I was super self-conscious because I had acne and all kinds of stuff that was going on. So once again, that was another initiation time of my life where my body was speaking super loud, wanting to be seen online, to share my gifts, to go on dates, but I stopped myself from fear. And so much of my journey has been about reclaiming my body's wisdom and intuition and voice and listening to the messages that come, and reclaiming my sexuality was the pathway that unlocked all of those doorways and that power and that ability to really hear my body, be with my body, and do life from that space.
Oh, that's beautiful. We're so glad you're here doing the work now. So I'm sorry for all the traumas that caused you, but we're here.
We're all benefiting.
Yeah, we're all benefiting from it.
So what is the closeted slut that lives in all of us women that you speak about?
So I wrote that on my website, and you know, as women and as men, as humans, we have access to all kinds of archetypes inside of ourselves. We have access to the good girl, the Madonna. We have access to the darkness, right? The sorceress, the witch. We have access to a wide variety of archetypes. And one of the archetypes that gets shamed and shunned and told as and seen as wrong is the slut, or the woman that is deeply connected and desires sex, desires sexuality. And so there's a lot of people doing work around their spiritual awakening or healing, and they're all heart chakra and third eye and kundalini and breath work. And my route is really through that archetype, the sexuality, and embracing and bringing the innocence back to this part and this archetype inside of us all.
Yeah, I feel like that's a struggle. You know, maybe this will resonate with you when I say it, but a common struggle we tend to have as, you know, quote unquote sexy models with like a largely male audience on our personal accounts anyway. It seems that people don't want to believe that you can be okay with showing your skin and having, you know, being okay with your sexuality, being okay expressing that openly, and also have something intelligent to say. And
it's like one or the other.
Yeah, it's like
they want one or the
a
other
box. And I know that many certainly seem to have a perspective that no one will listen to a sexy model chick who's trying to relate to the world through sexy imagery. But here on the show, you know, we have basically tried to build our platform as a bridge. So that's what we kind of call it, a bridge to invite our followers to cross over and open their eyes to the fact that sexuality and sensuality can be the invitation to explore what lies beneath it. And there's really nothing wrong with that route in our minds anyway. Maybe you'll prove us wrong right now. Maybe I don't know where you're at with that. So I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that kind of dynamic.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things there. One of which is, I feel that it's really old. First of all, of course, it's a very old paradigm to think that you have to choose intellect or sexuality. And I think that that comes from just general feminine and masculine principles, right? Because the feminine energetic is love and connection and beauty and pleasure. And the masculine energetic is more the mind and the doing and the action. And so it's old paradigm. And so what we're doing is, by bringing through our intelligence and our sexiness at the same time, is we're reintegrating that whole paradigm into something new. And people are shifting and awakening into what's possible. Now, I feel that, because I know for myself that I feel expressed and radiant when I am sharing my sensuality or images of myself that I am portraying as like me in pleasure or in sensuality or my body. But where I feel it tips over is doing it that in a way that is self-harming. And that could be like, I need to do this, or no one will follow me if I don't do this, or it's what gets all the likes, or it's what's popular. All of that stuff is not coming from a place of deep self-love and balance. And so it can eventually and over time create more imbalance, and it can create an unhealthy relationship with social media, with your followers, with who's attracted to you. So I find that if you're coming from a place of self-expression, and also we need more women to show themselves, loving themselves in this way, because it's an invitation for others to do the same. And so there's a difference between just like, in my mind, posting an image of yourself because it's quote unquote sexy versus you feel sexy in it, which is actually liberation.
Yeah. And there's so much in there. I mean, for me, I feel like when I started on social media, when I started in my modeling career, I know now, looking back, hindsight's 2020, that a lot of that was because I was attached to the idea of the validation that it would give me, and attached to whatever that, pick me up or that boost it would give me egoically was. And it's been a long road getting to where I don't feel like I'm so attached to that, but there's still, that's part of my character at some point, it's still going to be in there somewhere. There's going to be those stories that still live in me. And so I continue to work through those. But I do think it's a matter of figuring out how to make it a balance, because, getting validation that way it comes with the territory, first of all, but it's also, I'm trying to figure out where validation, or like seeking validation, where is the healthy point of it, and where it becomes exploitive and unhealthy. And I think you spoke a lot to it there. And then the other piece is that the slut shaming, which is like a whole new, epidemic that I think we're really getting close to squashing. So I feel good about that corner we're turning. And that's something I also, I have some things to not be proud of in my past, where I was shaming the women in my life for what they were doing, even though I was seeking validation in the ways I just described. So it's just an interesting thing that we're so living in these egos that just entrap us in all these stories and make everything we're doing right and the rest of the world wrong.
In terms of your validation piece, I want to share that when validation is so healthy, actually, to actually be praised, like the feminine grows from praise and from being seen as radiance and as beauty. It's like a flower given great water. It's like it wants to grow, right? And so the feminine is very much like that, and we want to grow it that way. And so that's really pointing me toward everyone who has a strong social media presence. Make your circle of women around you in your one-on-one life, in your intimate life, in your friendship, in your sister circles, create that validation there, and really praise each other and see each other in those spaces. Because I find that once you feel so full in your personal life, it's almost like the social media becomes an extension of it, and you don't necessarily need the masses to validate you. When you're getting it in your personal life, you're also getting it, of course, from yourself and your own practices that you do with you, but definitely in connection with other women. It's so powerful to really give that to each other, to really see like, wow, this is where you're shining, this is where you're radiant, this is where you are so unique, this is what you do better than anyone else. That kind of stuff really helps us grow.
Yeah, we know there's not so much of that, seeking for for using us for sex or something attached to it when it's coming from our female friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's funny, Jade, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we, the same idea, we dress for women, we dress for our friends when we go out. It's not really as much for guys because they don't give two shits really what you're wearing. If it's sexy, it's sexy. If it's not, it's not. That's pretty much how far it goes. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that being in women's groups and being closer with your friends and also speaking beauty into them and making that part of your practice can probably really help to get to a healthy place with validation. Thank you for that.
I'm curious just because you're so articulate in this area. I had done a post just about what Mercedes was saying about how we're trying to be this bridge and how you brought up if you're doing it for the likes, but so if I post a video in what I'm wearing, it doesn't really get any views and then the message isn't heard. The message about whatever our topic is of this week, whether it's narcissism or, your shadow self, whatever the topic is. However, if I am showing a lot of skin, it gets so many more views and then the message is heard. And my hopes is that a man who likes to see a video of a girl in, showing more skin, then hears that message when he wouldn't have,
planted anyway.
Yeah. And so it's at least this bridge that Mercedes talks about, but I had posted about that. And one of the comments that I got said, except it's not just that, it's the sexual objection of your body. You use your sexuality to get attention and an audience. Many women and girls do this. Personally, I think there is nothing wrong with it and you should be free to do as you please, but let's be honest about it. In a time where many women are screaming at men to stop objectifying them, it makes it all ridiculous when so many other women are seeking men to do just that. Trying to mix the two messages is very tricky. You can't effectively say, look at my tits and ass and now listen to my message. No one but people like yourself will take you seriously. I was curious. I wanted to respond, but I couldn't articulate my feelings in a way. And I feel like then I go to your page and I feel like she's saying it, but
I'd love to respond to that. Yeah, I feel with this, I feel that we all have our own dharma. We all have our own way. Like our soul guides us to what is our path. And if your being, like your deepest being in resonance is telling you that this is the path for you, then that's the path for you, right? If you're showing up with more skin and internally you're feeling like, I hate this, why do I have to do this? But you're doing it anyways, that's selling yourself. But if you're like, look, I'm an empowered woman, I know that this is going to work and I'm doing it and that's feels good to me, then yay, then that's your path, and that should be celebrated. And I think that anytime we as women are slut shaming each other for our paths, we're still a part of the vicious cycle. And so how can we celebrate each other's own journey? Like if you want to be a stripper, yay. If you want to dance on the pole, yay. If you want to cover your skin completely and not show yourself, yay. Like it's really all about a personal preference. Yeah, it's all about what you want. It's about being honest with yourself, because so many of us can't be honest with ourselves, and then we judge the women that are doing it in a way that is a trigger to our own shadow or our own repression inside of ourselves, right? Like if a woman's not comfortable wearing a bikini on camera, of course she's going to judge you for wearing a bikini on camera, right? And so I don't see there to be one way or another. It's really just about what is fueling your mission. And if showing your skin is empowering to you, if you feel good doing it, if you get more views and it actually you're getting the right kind of views too, because that's another thing that I would look at, right? If it's bringing the right kind of audience to you, because it sounds like your audience, you want to bring men who would be more attracted to women in skin so you can support them in. So it sounds like it is of support to you. And so it's just really about, is it serving me on the deepest level?
I like that. It's good guidance.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jade.
You have the next question, Mercedes?
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. It's so long. I don't remember you talking that much. Okay. We'll edit this out. So with all the talk of toxic masculinity today, I'd love to get a good definition from you of what toxic masculinity is versus healthy masculinity.
Okay. So I don't use the term toxic masculinity ever. I believe that men have toxic patterns and behaviors And women also have toxic patterns and behaviors. When we say something such as toxic masculinity, we're imprinting that as a reality, and we're relating the word masculinity, which is a beautiful word, to the word toxic. And so I actually don't like to combine the two and create a sort of term around it. Now there's definite, like the way that I like to use quote unquote the healthy masculine is the divine masculine, or the initiated masculine, or the king archetype. And I say initiated masculine because, you know, a lot of the men that are producing toxic behaviors and are being quote unquote called toxic masculinity, they're men that haven't learned from their fathers or from their tribe or from the people, the men around them, what is healthy masculinity?
Right.
What is a way to show up as a man? Like this is the state of the world that we're in right now, is that the men are all waking up going, wait, how do I actually be a man in this world? We were taught so many lies, right? And in a lot of ways, we're also as women doing the same. So yeah, there's lots of toxic behaviors that men exhibit. There's lots of toxic behaviors that women exhibit. But to give you the comparison, right, and kind of a framework for what the sort of divine masculine or the initiated masculine is I see this as a man who has entered his heart. Like his energy is more heart focused and heart centered, whether that's in leading his business, leading his kids, leading his date. Like it's coming from more of a heart-centered space. He's deeply present to himself, first and foremost, to his thoughts, to his mind, and to his body, because he can't be present with us. He can't be present on a date. He can't be present during sex if he's not aware of what's actually happening in his body, in his mind, what he thought about 5 minutes ago that was patterned from childhood, right? Like the healthy masculine is cultivating awareness to himself, and then he can offer a presence to the feminine, and he can just be present in his life. And so yeah, and then like integrity is a big one. The masculine is also a master of time and space, so he's able to like be on time and have things organized, right? And honesty is a big one. And a lot of this, it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice and a lot of being around this energy. And I think that a lot of times the term toxic masculinity gets thrown around because men from a certain group of consciousness like to hang out together. And so the best thing to do is to follow people or invest in programs and offerings from men, from the masculine, that are holding space for men to rise. One of my teacher's highest recommendations is John Wineland for any man. Yeah, I just did
He's my magic trick.
Deep dive intense. Yeah, just did a 4-day retreat with him, and it was just so profound. Amazing. So yeah,
incredible. And toxic masculinity, when I hear the term, it kind of triggers me to tie those two words together, as if all masculinity, when we're talking about an energy that, you know, we're all half embodying, or not half, you know what I'm saying? We all have masculinity in us, whether we identify as a woman or man. And that idea of, you know, I don't want to get people into the idea of that's what that term means. Toxic masculinity does not mean that all masculinity is toxic. And I also think that there's this piece of women can embody toxic masculinity in just the same way, where we're overly rigid, where we're not empathetic, we're not coming from that heart center, like you're saying, or we're not, you know, doing things from a place of love. So yeah, there's so many different terms getting thrown around today, though I feel like it's really hard to navigate it unless you have like a new agey dictionary with you at all times. So yeah, thank you for explaining that for us. And I like that the other terms that you're using in place of that seems really solid. So there is a kind of silent war between the genders, it seems. And I'm sure that what you just spoke on there plays into all of that, and plays into how we're going after separation a lot of the time instead of this union that you speak to. So can you put some words to that for us? The war between the genders?
Yeah. So we are naturally different, and that is our gift, but it's also what makes us not understand each other. It's what makes us fight. It's what makes us, because our feminine essence to brain is thinking that all brains are feminine essence. And then a masculine essence brain is thinking that all brains are masculine essence. And so we get into relationship, and what we don't realize is that this person is very different than we are. And we are not taught the differences. We're not taught how to engage, how to communicate in a way that serves that person's brain, that person's experience, that person's body and nervous system. And so what happens is that we get into these relationships because there's chemistry, there's attraction, of course, there's beauty, there's love. But when we don't actually know how to relate and honor each other's differences, we end up hiding things, lying, doing things behind each other's backs. We end up yelling. We end up saying things in ways that hurts the other. We end up emasculating. We end up defeminizing, which is something that I say. We end up hurting each other, really. And that's been going on for a very long time. And so right now, I feel like is a really special time because we're in a time where we're actually realizing that, and now we get to bring it all into awareness and realize how we have been tearing each other down and hurting each other. And even if we are in a quote unquote healthy relationship, we're committed, we're loving, we're not betraying each other, we're communicating, we can still hurt each other a lot in that. And so we have so much work to do in terms of unraveling all of the patterns. And they really are just that. They're patterns that stem from a very long time ago. And we need to start taking a look at that, like how we are different and celebrating each other's differences so that we can stop so we can put an end to that fight, that war that's happening between the sexes.
The separation, get back to unity, get back to communion, and get back to connection. I love that. Okay, so this is an excerpt from your site where you say, as women who are badass, we start trusting our own inner masculine more than we trust his. And when we do that, we start throwing off the polarity and passion in the relationship. So in this culture of women feeling this need to be hyper masculine in order to measure up, and because in our culture it's socially acceptable to emasculate our men, unfortunately, how do we identify where we are emasculating our men? Let's start there.
Yeah. So with this quote, I want to point out that it's very subtle, right? We might in our minds go, oh, but I trust him. But the thing is that if we're really good at getting our work done, if we're really good at showing up on time for the podcast, if we're really good at organizing our workday and doing all these things, we automatically are building a lot of trust with our inner masculine. We're really saying, like, I can show up, I can get things done, I can make money, I can do all these things, which are all very masculine energetics. So when in relationship to a man, it's important to take a look at if that part of us is overpowering his, because the masculine in relationship is leadership, right? It's a lot about being able, and the feminine is being able to be led, being able to receive, being able to follow and to be guided. And so a really simple example is if you as the woman are always choosing where you go on a date, for example, like you don't allow him to choose. Maybe you trust that you'll choose the better restaurant. Maybe you trust that you'll get there on time. Maybe you'll trust, right? You start trusting your own mind and your own direction more than his. And when you do this, it automatically puts him into more of his feminine, because again, this is the polarity. And so if we want amazing sex, we want amazing polarity as well. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a male-female relationship, or it doesn't matter what gender you are, but we do want that polarity in masculine and feminine to have that deep passion, that dynamic passion between the two poles. So let's see, what else did I want to say about that? So in terms of really those emasculation patterns, we want to look at how we are unconsciously leading and not letting him lead, right? And then we want to soften and surrender into our feminine and be able to be led. That's one way. We also want to look at any and all ways that we are criticizing him. Get that out. We want to look at any ways that we are criticizing him. And this can be really subtle. So again, this is why we kind of need to tease these out and kind of study the way that we relate, because saying something such as, I don't like that shirt, you can say that in a way that doesn't come off as criticism. You can say something like, you look really good. How about blue instead to match those pants, right? So you're not tearing down his choice, because in criticism, there's more of a chance for emasculation, right? Another way that is not really talked about in terms of emasculation is around our sexual patterns. And if we are faking our pleasure or faking our orgasms, or we're not fully present in the sexual experience, like there's a lot of women, if they'll just experience their man coming at them a certain way, wanting sex in a certain pattern or a certain position, they'll just numb out. But that is really emasculating a man, because you're not drawing his presence forward by that. You're not drawing his consciousness and his embodiment forward by going numb. And you're especially not drawing yours out either. And so in those situations, whatever situation, however your man is coming to you for sex, do not numb out. Do not fake your pleasure. Do not leave and go somewhere else. Like, can you embody yourself? And if you're not liking it, can you communicate? Can you dance a certain way? Can you move to a different corner of the bed? Like, wake yourself up in the experience, and then that will wake him up as well. So these are some ways. And I do want to point out too that also it's important to note that a man that is super in his divine masculine or in his king archetype, he can't get emasculated. So this is just an interesting little piece to recognize, is that any attempt that a woman will make to emasculate a man, if he's already there, like he's actually been initiated and he's holding a very strong level of presence already, he's going to point it out and be like, you're doing that, right? He's actually not going to allow himself to be emasculated. But the thing is that we're just not there. Like, most of the world is not there. And so it's important to know that they're not victims, right? They're also having choice in every single moment of relationship. We both are in choice. But yeah, these are some ways that we can emasculate our men.
God, I'm so guilty of all of it too.
Exactly. We all are.
And I'm hoping to get better at it, but slow
I like how you said the criticism. I think it also goes into like that book, Nonviolent Communication, like always just adding like a please or something instead of it being a command. Like if they feel like we're the boss of them, like that's not very sexy.
Or their mother. Yeah.
Yeah, but if
we want them to be the boss of us,
right?
We want them to be like, take your shirt off. Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to switch those roles.
That was a really helpful book, Nonviolent Communication.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. And I wanted to say that there's like a slippery slope there that I just want to definitely touch on in case anyone listening is going, what about narcissists? You know, like what about someone that's deeply narcissistic in a very unhealthy sense? If your partner, you know, let's say the man in the situation is in a place that is unhealthy and it's causing the woman to essentially be the victim in that circumstance. And yes, we want to be led and we want to have that partner that's able to lead us and be able to trust him to lead us and not lead us into a dark place. How do we navigate something like that? Do you have any tips on that?
Oh my gosh. Well, if you consciously know that you're in that, you either leave or get help like right away, because that's abusive, right?
We usually don't know though, right?
Right. You usually don't know. And so, but at the same time, if I would say something that is like why I got into this work, the original piece of my story is that you actually do know, like deep down, like deep down, you actually do know. And actually the more, and actually like the more intimate you are with yourself, like spend more time alone outside of the relationship, spend more time in a personal self-pleasure practice where you're being intimate with your body, you're actually feeling your body. Because in a self-pleasure practice, like you have to feel your emotions, you have to feel your blockages, you have to feel all the places that you're holding on to. And so the more self-intimate you can be, the more real you can also be with what's actually going on inside of your relationship. Like spend time sleeping alone, self-pleasure alone, going on walks in nature alone, spend more time alone if you're even considering that you might be in an unhealthy dynamic, right?
It's a great tip.
And yeah, you do know deep down it's just about getting quiet enough to really hear that message. But one thing that I will say is that I think that a lot of us get into unhealthy relationships for a couple reasons. I think one, we don't feel worthy of what we really want, which is deep in there. And again, that self-intimacy work is really going to help unleash and release that. So we don't feel worthy of what we really desire and what we really want. Another thing is that we allow ourselves to lean into sexual intimacy probably too soon into the interaction with someone before we can really tune into and feel if we want to be energetically connected to them in that way. Because for most women, when you have sex, you're opening your emotions too. You're opening your heart. It's an emotional experience as well. And sometimes when we're not fully sure and then we open that way, we can lean in, we can feel really connected, but we don't really know the person well enough. We haven't seen enough of their patterns to really, really know. So that's another way. Like there's a lot of pieces that we can really be aware of at the very beginning of a relationship that we can, quote unquote, look for the red flags. But yeah, it's really just about going slow and allowing our bodies to attune to this person, to how they're continually showing up, not who they say they are, because that's a big thing with narcissists is they can look really good on paper. Like their job can be great, their friends can be great, they're charming, all of those things, but it's how are they actually showing up consistently.
Yeah, that's huge. It's it seems like such a big responsibility to take on that self-work, especially if that's the first time you're deciding to look into that, if you're hearing this and going, what does that even mean? But there are so many ways that you can begin to do that shadow work, and it's just the tip of the iceberg, and see what happens. I think that when you step towards your true self in that way, it meets you more than halfway. It's comes and finds a middle ground with you very quickly. So I don't know, that might sound too out there to understand, but yeah, thank you for that. Good.
What about, can it be emasculating when we're trying to, I guess, ask our men to be more conscious or to grow with us? Can that sometimes be emasculating? Because
I feel like everything I say is emasculating these days. I'm like everything. I'm just like, I don't
even know how to articulate this question. You know what I mean? Like
so there's two different pieces to this.
It's almost like you're telling him he's not enough, right?
Right. So there's two different pieces to this. There's one piece of requesting growth on a large scale in relationship versus a moment of requesting presence. So these are two different topics. I'll cover both. So if you're wanting him to be present in the moment, like let's say you're on a date and he like whips out his phone and you're like, what the fuck, that doesn't feel good. Or like you're like being intimate, you're kissing, and then all of a sudden he's like watching TV and it just like doesn't feel good to you. Instead of saying or pointing out you're not being present or where are you or what happened, you can let him know through your body that it's not working. So you might go, or you might like tap him on the shoulder and like do a little cute little nudge, or you might pull him into you, but let him know through your body. Okay. And one of the things that I like, the masculine, like men want to make women happy. Like they just don't know when they're not being conscious or present in a moment. And so instead of using the first things first, instead of using words, try first and foremost using sounding and using the body language to call him back in to the moment. And you can do that through frustration. You can do that through showing frustration. You can do that through showing pleasure. Maybe you're not even frustrated. You just want his attention. And then you like start touching yourself and you're like, look over here, right? And you just call him into you. You allow him to become more present through how you're being with yourself. And then the second energetic is if you're in a long-term relationship, and you either want to do sex therapy or couples therapy, or you want your partner to go to men's work. You just, let's say you're a woman and you're doing a lot of personal development growth and you want your partner to also be on that same page. A really good way to introduce it or to ask it is to not do it from a place of you need to, or this has to happen, or you're wrong if this doesn't happen, but kind of like, hey, like I found this. What do you think about this? Like have a conversation about it. Truly just talk to him like you're actually curious. Come at it from a place of inquiry, like, what do you think it would be like if we went to this? Or what do you think it would be like if we read this book together, right? I found this book, I really like it, and I'm curious about reading it with you. How would you feel about that, right? So you're inviting him, and then he can make his own choice, which is a completely different energetic than I need us to go to therapy together, right?
It's a command, versus an invitation.
Yeah.
I got so much work to do, girls. I've got so much to do. And everything for me feels like, it's coming from this like shame core. So then when I'm triggered in one of the ways you might have just mentioned of him not being present or whatever, my initial reaction is to be reactionary instead of responsive, first of all, but also to come at it at a sense of like, how can I shame you into doing what I want, which is like the worst, most terrible thing to admit, but that is, where I'm at. What can I tell you guys?
Thank you for being so honest. And I've spent a large portion of my last relationship in that, which is like how I learned so much about this was because I was experiencing it and I was going, I don't want to be this. I don't want to do this anymore. This dynamic doesn't work, because honestly, it doesn't feel good for us either. So if it's emasculating them, this is a really good point, that if any of our behaviors are emasculating them, it's also bringing us out of our center, because we want to be in pleasure and in love and in truth and honoring our partners. That's the core of like who we are. We want to be in a powerful relationship that's really honoring on both sides. And so just realizing that, okay, I have these patterns is a step, and I want to not do it to him anymore, but also like the real shift and it can start happening way faster and on a deeper level when we go, actually, I don't want to be this for me anymore. Like, I don't want to be this version of myself.
Right. It is very much a shared suffering. And it's just, again, like owning up to your patterns, becoming responsible for your piece of this. And I find that usually it's all me. And I'm like, okay, I got a lot of work to do, but I'll get there, girls. I'll get there. All right. So we have spoken already a lot about the masculine and feminine energies, and I want to get a little deeper into that, but we've had the pleasure on the show of exploring those characteristics of the masculine and feminine energies with other guests who've come on. So if you're listening right now and you're new to these terms, we'd invite you to go back and listen to the episodes we did with London Angel Winters, or her husband Justin Patrick Pierce, or Maddie Moon. There's others in there, but what I want to know from you, Ashae, is how do we become more aware of more aware and maybe just conscious of which energies we are embodying at any given moment, which energy we're in at that moment. And then once we're aware, how do we shift it if we want to, AKA energetic agility, right? Like, how do we get there?
Yeah. So when we're in a feminine space, we're in like we're in the inner realms. So we're in feeling, we're in emotion, we're in pleasure, we're in an experience with our inner being and with our body, our physical body. So that could be movement of emotion, movement of the body, movement of and trauma, right? And so all of that is a deep feminine space. It's also slow. It's also, there's like a lot of softness in that space. And the masculine space is more of a projecting energy. So it's more doing and creating and envisioning, and we can be in both energies at the same time. So for example, today I'm doing a lot of body healing these days, and I'm healing my spine. I'm doing work with my spine. But anyways, I was working and I was typing and I was doing, but I was like laying in bed. And not only was I laying in bed, because that's just the physical, but my actual inner energetics were deep internal. So I was working, but I was deeply present with myself. And in that moment, I said, wow, this is the perfect balance. I felt 50-50, masculine and feminine, where I was really connected to what was happening in my body and my breath and just the inner realms of my mind and my thoughts and what was going on. But I was also focused, and I was also producing, and I was also creating. And so the more you just ask on a regular basis, where am I?
Yeah.
Literally just that question to yourself, and start feeling, am I connected to my inner realm? Am I connected to feeling? Am I connected to emotion? Because that will help you feel if you're in the feminine space. And if you can identify if you're in the feminine space or not, you'll be able to tell. And most people are existing for the most part in a masculine space. As we have moved into a more healing culture, self-care culture, there is more feminine energetics definitely showing up. But for the most part, a lot of us are in a masculine energetic. We're getting up with an alarm, we're making breakfast, we're working, we're going to the gym. And again, like I said, you can do a lot of these things from a feminine space. It's just about bringing that awareness of, how can I do this more softly? How can I do this while also feeling what's going on for me? So that I might be making a smoothie, but I'm really also like swaying my hips, and I'm breathing into my body, and I'm feeling, right? And so that's how we kind of get awareness to what's going on, where we are, and then find where we want to be.
And so that's how when we can recognize that, we move into the other one a little more gracefully, because we're just becoming aware. And then we've listened to this podcast, so we have the tools of how to get into the other space if we want to be, playing the other role for some reason or another. Okay. I like that. I wanted to ask off of that, is there, like right now I'm in the last phase of my moon cycle, about to start my period in a few days. So this is when I am the most masculine of all my, months.
So much today.
Yeah.
Not you, me.
No, but
we're on the same.
I know. Both of us get in the same realm. We know. How do we navigate that piece of it? Or have you found any luck in how to navigate the different phases of our cycles, and where we seem to be energetically prone to in those phases?
Yeah, it's just about really awareness. Like some women, for example, cannot work at all when they're bleeding, don't feel the productivity. And so listen to that, follow that, right? It's about becoming aware of where you're at in your cycle. So if in this stage right now, right before you bleed, it's the luteal phase. If you're in this phase and you have so much energy, it's like, great, use that to maximum potential, right? Knowing that probably in a week or two, you're not going to be there, right? So how can you maybe schedule more of your calls or more of the tasks, more of your productivity things in this phase right before you bleed, so that when you do start bleeding, you can give yourself rest if that's what your body calls for. You can go slower, you can take days for self-care. It's really just about knowing your cycle, because again, all of us are different. There are some patterns, right? There are some patterns around our energy levels, but also it varies. And so notice where you're the most energized, where you're the most depleted, and when you are the most energized, go for it.
Yes. And I noticed that when I'm in this, it's weird, because it's like when I'm in this hyper masculine mode, I'm also most sexually charged, or I have that type of energy. And my husband already knows, that this is a time he doesn't probably want to be around me. But of course, that's an issue, because this is when I'm most sexually charged. And so he's kind of in an opposite cycle to me sometimes, which is interesting. We're still investigating how to work through all that. But how do we, I'm just curious of, how do we get men to be more excited about knowing about these phases with us, and so that we can explore them, and also both be conscious of like, here's what I'm going through right now, and here's how, it's best to interact with me, or like, so it's happier in the household.
Totally. I feel like that stems from just that inner excitement, right? If we want our partners to be excited about something, we embody it ourselves. So cultivating that inner excitement of really mapping out your energy levels and your mood and your digestion and all these things, your libido, so that so that you can get excited about sharing it. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, you can't necely make someone excited about something, but
you don't want to be
can
excited about my cycle.
You can communicate how it would touch your heart, how it
Yeah.
would make you
Yeah.
happy and make you feel loved if he tuned into it and if he was more aware of it, right? So bring it back to like a love language, bring it back to him like loving you really by tuning into that.
Yeah, and anyone listening, if you're a guy, this is a magic trick right now that Ashae is giving you, because if you go up to your chick and you're like, hey, I really want to get attuned and aligned with what's going on with your body and your cycle and like how we can navigate any of the feelings and emotions you're going through, you got
winner.
winner. Sign me up.